Check Podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and this is Chamber Chats, coming to you as always from here in the podcasting studios at Czech Media Group, one of our chamber champions. I'd like to begin, as always, of course, by acknowledging that I live and work in the ancestral territory and lands of the Lekwungen-speaking nations known to us as Songhees and Esquimalt. And Chamber Chats is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, who are changing what banking can do for people, for community, and for the world. So, we live in a coastal community, right? Anywhere on Vancouver Island, anywhere on the West Coast. And coastal is the name on everything. There's companies that have coastal, and locations have coastal, and companies have coastal in their name. There is an organization in town called the South Island Prosperity Partnership, which we've talked about in the past, and we'll talk more about in a couple of minutes. But within SIP, South Island Prosperity Partnership, is an organization called COAST, the Center for Ocean Applied Sustainable Technologies.
That's
he
it.
said, looking at Jason Goldsworthy, who's the executive director. You're no stranger to this studio either, right?
No, we're in here on a regular basis too, doing our own Coast Talks with companies that we support and represent. So yes, very familiar with the location.
Yeah. We're going to talk about things like the blue economy in a couple of minutes and how this is going to be transformative for the economy in this region through what Coast is doing. But a question I very often ask people, Jason, is so you meet somebody for the first time, how do you explain to them what Coast is and what you do?
Nice to be here, Bruce. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Yes, no, thanks. And it gives a great opportunity for us to talk a little bit about Coast. And the acronym, I think, fits a lot better. And the centre, we're trying to get us known as Coast, mainly because I'm sick of trying to say Centre for Ocean Applied Sustainable Technologies. Yeah. But Coast is, we brand ourselves as Pacific Canada's hub for the blue economy. But what that looks like is we're really a support network for ocean entrepreneurs or innovators that are looking at new technologies in the blue economy. Mm-hmm. And we provide support services to those companies to help them get a leg up and get established and hopefully be successful in scaling scaling their business.
Yeah, so we'll unpack that a little bit. The blue economy is ocean-related stuff, right? Let's go into that a little bit.
It is. And the blue economy, the term's probably been around for about 10 years. I think the UN really pushed it about nearly 10 years ago. And the blue economy inherently is about sustainable development of the oceans or sustainable use of the ocean. So we often use the term sustainable blue economy. It's a bit of a tautology where, the blue economy sort of means that anyway. Yeah. But the way I like to look at it from my perspective is our ocean industries and, marine industries. We've been working with the oceans for thousands of years, but a lot of the times, and probably more over the last 100 and 150 years, we've been a bit more extractive and a bit more exploitive of those oceans, whether or not it's pulling resources from them or using them for trash dumps. The blue economy is all about treating our oceans more as assets. So learning more about what the oceans, how they behave, and rather than affecting them in a negative way, is how the oceans can help us become better and still have that, what we can build businesses out of and build economies out of it, but have that real sustainable approach to it.
So Coast operates, as we said, within the South Island Prosperity Partnership, which is the regional economic development agency for the South Island region. One of the mandates for SIP from the very beginning was to create a new economy, to grow jobs, to bring new jobs here. That's what you're trying to do. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so the opportunity, the blue economy opportunity is worldwide is identified as a huge opportunity. I think by 2030, there's estimates of the blue economy being worth $3 trillion US. And it's growing, it's fast outpacing other economies at the moment, mainly because the ocean is a vast resource. I go back to using that word resource. It's a vast asset, but the opportunities to utilize the ocean in a number of different ways is a huge opportunity. You mentioned at the top of the show here that we're an island, we're in touch with the ocean, where everything we look at is related to the ocean and the marine sector. So that becomes a huge opportunity for this region. So with the advancements of certain technologies and certain digital technologies, we're seeing this massive influx of opportunities in terms of businesses, but also jobs. And there are high paying and high quality jobs that we're we're seeing. So this location's a fantastic position to take advantage of that. And I think with a little bit of nurturing with that blue economy and a little bit of attraction, this area could really diversify its economy into being a blue economy major player on the global stage.
Yeah, I mean, diversify is very important. You can't be reliant on certain sectors. You need to have a broader sort of spectrum of things within your economy. Spectrum is the word I'm trying to say. Anyway, so some of the people involved in the blue economy have been on this program. We've spoken to C-SPAN, the Victoria Shipyards. We've spoken to Open Ocean Robotics. We have some other ones coming up with people that are already in that business here. So you do have partners now that you're collaborating with that exist in this region currently. Let's talk about some of those.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned C-SPAN is obviously a larger industry and it's been around for many years.
Yeah.
And we've got other successful industry players like that in British Columbia and in this region. But they're also looking at this transition more as well into more innovation. We actually did a podcast with C-SPAN's innovation manager a few months ago where they talked about, where they're innovating in terms of improving on their operational efficiencies. And all this is about, more dealing with climate issues and getting environmental sustainability. So a lot of that innovation is driving that. So C-SPAN's obviously a big partner of ours and a big advocate of what we're trying to achieve and work with. You mentioned Open Ocean Robotics represents the smaller type organizations, these ones that have grown from very small to are now looking at worldwide exports to different locations. And Victoria, this region, has had actually a very rich history of this technology development. There's companies, Access Technologies, we've worked with, based up in Sydney, are exporting some of their technologies around the world. So when you start sort of biting into where these companies are, that they are located here, they may not have the markets here, but they're developing some of these worldwide technologies, and the world is using them, and it's fantastic to be with that. So it's a really good story, and we just have to sort of tell it a little bit better and nurture it, and also it attracts new interest into this region. So I think it's a very positive thing for Victoria and Vancouver Island.
Absolutely. Someone else that we've spoken with on this particular program is Cascadia Seaweed, for example. That, again, that's harvesting not seafood, but other food from the ocean is what they do, right?
Yeah, and we often say innovation and technology, and we think hard and like digital and hardware. But this area, and we've just looking at our what we call our ecosystem of companies in British Columbia. A majority of them are aquaculture based, whether it be shellfish or finfish or commercial fisheries or seaweed, which falls under aquaculture. And probably one of the potential highest growing areas is kelp and seaweed farming. So Cascadia Seaweed, based in Sydney, again, another great news story, making worldwide progress. But they exist all up and down this region. So, and I think it falls back on this is geographically and environmentally a fantastic place to do this type of work. So that's a huge advantage that we have here.
You use the word sustainability quite a bit. I think we all know that we, in the last many generations, have not taken very good care of our oceans. We need to clean them up. We're going to talk about that next. Our guest on Chamber Chats today is Jason Goldsworthy, who is the Executive Director of COAST, the Center for Ocean Applied Sustainable Technologies. Look at me getting it right off the top there.
They're perfect.
So you talked about sustainability. We know that for generation after generation, we have not taken very good care of our oceans. We've polluted. The beaches are polluted. They're full of plastic. So tell me about that element, what that plank is and what COAST is doing.
I think the first step, and one of the first steps, and I must just step back. I mean, COAST isn't driving new technology or coming up with intellectual. We're there to support companies that are doing it. And what we're seeing is there are a lot of these companies coming out now that are into this space of how the best way to clean up, not only just clean up the oceans, but then also how do we keep utilizing and working with the oceans without further polluting? So there's that double-edged component. So one of the biggest things that we're seeing is we still need to know a lot more about the oceans and how they're reacting. So there's a lot of technology out there right now that's out there talking about the health of the ocean. How do we best measure the health of the ocean, and how does our interactions with it have an impact, either negatively or positively? So there's a lot of technology around that. I wouldn't necessarily say there's a huge amount around there's not a magic bullet to say, hey, there's a technology here that's going to clean up the ocean, or return us to where it was, or improve it completely. But these little incremental changes and knowledge and ways of finding out more about it helps our researchers then determine better ways of working with the ocean or cleaning it up, which then drives new technology. So it's this circular type thing that we're seeing these new ideas and new innovation come out of the approach.
Yeah, another organization you work with and that we work with at the Chamber and have been on this podcast is Ocean Networks Canada. When you talk about monitoring the conditions in the oceans and the seas, they're a pretty cool organization.
Again, I come back to that's why it makes it a natural fit to this region. I mean, Ocean Networks Canada is an incredible organisation spawned out of the University of Victoria, have some of the most incredible underwater observing infrastructure in the world.
Yeah.
And it's right here on our doorstep. And, their focus is primarily around research and learning more, but their infrastructure is really well suited to test new technologies. So, we're working with Ocean Networks Canada quite a bit on identifying how we can bring companies in, utilize their infrastructure. So, that's all right here. And it makes sense that we utilize what we've got.
This sort of ocean-based work that's being done is easier to do here, I would think, because of our climate compared to other parts of Canada. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I mean it's definitely definitely nicer. It's nicer to
Nicer
be
place
here.
to live, yeah.
Yeah. I mean that is, but I mean there are advantages to other parts of Canada as well, and that's what makes Canada a really a good prospect for these sorts of companies testing their technology, for example, because there are locations that you need these technologies to deal with ice, and there's places on the Atlantic coast that need that offer that we don't.
In the Arctic.
And the Arctic, exactly, and that's a big component at the moment, or a direction forward for some of these markets. But you're right. I mean, this is a pretty good location to do this. It is relatively mild in terms of the weather conditions. We don't get the hurricanes and the cyclones. We may get an occasional earthquake, but that can actually be good opportunity for testing and monitoring and stuff. So yeah, I mean, you're right. It is a really good spot for these sorts of companies to set up here and establish and develop their technology, bring jobs to the region, and then, as I say, export that technology to the world.
Yeah, Ocean Networks Canada, which we spoke about, do things all over the world. They monitor things like that. Like you said, Open Ocean Robotics, another company we spoke about, are they're like robots in the water. They're unstaffed, remotely operated things that go in open water to see what's going on. So that's sort of a warmer climate thing too. So, but in Canada, Halifax is considered the ocean technology supercluster area. And when I was with SIP at one time, and I used to joke, well, that's all well and good, but we've got all the same stuff here, but our weather's better because we have the post-secondaries, we have the technology, we have the Navy, all that stuff that's here. But tell me about the dynamic between the two coasts, between us and Halifax.
I think Halifax, I mean, I just got back from Halifax a couple of weeks ago, and they've done an incredible job at harnessing, what we're trying to harness here as well. I mean, I think, from the perspective that they're probably, with what we're trying to do, they're probably a few years further advanced. And I look at the two sort of economic opportunities, and BC's economic opportunity is much greater than Halifax, purely just because, well, not purely, but partly because of the population, partly because of we have some amazing geographical assets here that they may not have there. The weather's obviously different, but also our access to Asia as well, and the partnerships we can build across the Pacific and also down to the US on the West Coast as well. So I think the opportunity here is really a lot larger, but they've done an incredible job at really harnessing what they can do, and we're in some respects looking up to what they've done in the last 5 to 7 years in growing that innovation ecosystem in Atlantic Canada anyway. Yes, we'd like to see a little bit more out here, and I think that's where Coast is, and we're pushing to get the recognition that British Columbia in this region can be a huge player, and we've got all the pieces for it. So it's just a matter of tying it all together.
There's a number of other names that I want to mention here. So you talked about UVic. You do stuff with Camosun. BC Ferries is a part of all this. C-SPAN, we talked about Relmex. Tell me what you do with the Navy, because we have a lot of Navy here.
We do, and One of the things, so Coast is obviously civilian. Coast is looking at all sorts of new technology, but there is a huge opportunity in what we call dual use technology, which is technology can be used in a civilian deployment, but then it can also be considered in a defense or a military type deployment. So you mentioned open ocean robotics. There's some discussions around dual use technologies with them. So there is a big opportunity there, especially with the Navy here, with CFB Esquimalt, but also some of the other assets, physical assets we have too. There's CF Meter off Nanaimo, which is a test range. There's partnerships with the US as well. So there's the companies that come here and we work with, we definitely identify, if there's that dual use technology, there's that opportunity to work not only in the civilian space, but then also in the military space. And that the benefit of having the Navy here at the base is a huge plus for us.
Huge part of our supply chain across the world is based on water because of the ships that bring us things. Want to talk about that next. Our guest on Chamber Chats today is Jason Goldsworthy. He's the executive director of COAST, the Center for Ocean Applied Sustainable Technologies. We do a lot of shipping around here. There's a whole bunch of stuff moving around. We've seen the impact that disruptions in weather and climate can have on our supply chain. So how, in a way, will COAST be working in that sector to make sure that stays sustainable and reliable?
Just a small problem, right? Yeah. And I think it's, to use an analogy, how do you net an elephant, right? One bite at a time.
Yeah.
The shipping, I mean, we're not going to see a reduction in that shipping anytime soon, I believe.
No.
But what we are going to see is advancements in technology that are going to support improving shipping, whether or not it's be as simple as route optimization. A big direction we're talking right now, or a big thing across all industries, but specifically in the ocean industries, is AI, the use of artificial intelligence or machine learning, or let's call it high-end computing power.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that will help us be more efficient and optimize shipping routes. There's a lot of work going into the impact of shipping on mammals, and whether it not be collisions or physical collisions, but also the impact to sound and noise. So I don't see us replacing shipping anytime soon. But what I do see is some of these technologies identifying better ways to get that shipping happening, and just efficiencies. Port efficiencies is a big one. We know Vancouver is, I think, the third or fourth largest port in North America. It's definitely the largest port in Canada. And we've seen that, they've had some efficiency issues, but these sorts of technologies can help improve those efficiencies. Then we're also talking about marine decarbonisation. Big issue, big area where there's lots of research and lots of technology development going on different types of fuels, different types of propellers, different types of hull coatings to improve that efficiency and reduce carbon, reduce the diesel emissions.
The resistance of a ship moving in the water. Kind of thing,
exactly.
Right?
So Coast is helping out companies in all of those areas that are trying to get, and what we're looking at is building partnerships with things like the ports, building partnerships with Seaspan, building partnerships with the Canadian Coast Guard about how we can get those technologies demonstrated, how these companies can show that their technology can really work really well, because that becomes commercial and they can sell it, and then we also get the added benefit of more improved shipping.
Yeah. One of the conversations that's always ongoing here is shore power too, which would be at Ogden Point in our case. There are ports around the world that have gone electric, and the GVHA, Greater Victoria Harbour Authority, is working on that here. But that's another part of that greening of the whole marine sector, right?
Absolutely. And I like to look at it because my background is actually in sort of energy. And I looked at it, it's not just the shore power that you're looking at, it's how do you get the electricity there, or how do you generate the electricity? And that's where we start talking about ocean energy opportunities, because it's at that location. So, it what's the word? It cascades down.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
There's a whole heap of different opportunities here, whether it be specific to ocean energy or the distributions or the grids that require this infrastructure to be built to allow this to happen, the marine decarbonisation or marine electrification.
Marine energy always brings to mind, to me, the idea of tidal power. We have solar power, we have wind power. We have tides all day, every day here. They're reliable. They come and they go, but it doesn't seem to have been a lot of traction in the area of tidal power. Is that on the radar for Coast at all?
Yeah, we're actually working on a couple of projects right
Oh,
now
good.
with some partners. There's you mentioned at some point through the chat today UVic, and we
Mhm.
have a really strong partnership with University of Victoria, and they were successful just last year on winning a grant for accelerating community energy transformation. And they're looking at how to look at smaller communities and how they look at their energy transition to more renewable sources. And part of that is wave and tidal and marine energy. And UVic has got a very strong history in marine energy. So tidal has been a challenge. Wave and any marine energy has, mainly because it's hard to generate and it's hard to be reliable in an
Is it
ocean
hard
and
to
marine
capture
environment.
too?
It is, but
Yeah.
I think it's the variability, and there's a
Mm.
whole. I think the longevity or the resilience of a system is probably harder, or reliability of a system, because you're in a marine environment.
Yeah.
So it's pretty hard out there.
Oh, yeah.
So, but the other component to this is how do you connect it to the grid? Like you might be able to generate the power at a location, but how do you connect it so you can actually get paid for it? Because these things are costly.
Yeah.
So that becomes a challenge. So what we're working with at Coast and some of our project partners is breaking down some of those other barriers so those technology developers can focus on developing their device to perfect the capture of the energy. And then how does it get linked into a network where they can actually get paid for it?
Yeah. Coast operates, as we said, within the South Island Prosperity Partnership. Little background, I was on the board that created SIP in the first place. I was the interim CEO at SIP before I came to the chamber. So I want to talk about this again in terms of economic development that's outside of the marine sector, if you will, but the impact this will have on our entire economy is enormous. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, especially with the ocean, the marine decarbonisation, this has lasting impacts through a supply chain, whether it be manufacturing, whether it be just bringing high quality paying jobs into the region, whether it be fostering businesses grow,
Yeah.
then those businesses need other support. So once we put a little bit of effort into this sector, which is a growing, emerging sector, and we're in a perfect position to take advantage of this sector, being the blue economy,
Yeah.
it has spin-off effects around it. And I think the opportunity in manufacturing and supply chain is quite large. We're targeting 1,500 jobs over the next 3 years that we see grow in this region, just because of spending some time on the blue economy.
Yeah. Good paying jobs means people will spend that money and stimulate the economy too, and that's a good thing.
We like that.
Jason Goldsworthy is the executive director of COAST, the Center for Ocean Applied Sustainable Technologies. To find out more about it, go to the website of the South Island Prosperity Partnership, which is southislandprosperity.ca. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Bruce.
Right. I'm Bruce Williams. See you again for another Chamber Chat.